People doing extraordinary things to help others.
If he didn't do what he did, we would have died.
Heroic acts that have sometimes meant the difference between life and death.
And he was just crying, "Don't let me die, don't let me die, save me, save me."
Amazing acts of courage.
It was just a natural reaction. This guy needs help.
Captured on dash cams, CCTV, and mobile phones. Incredible stories from the UK.
He put his life at risk just to save me.
And across the world.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
All the people that assisted with my rescues that day are my heroes.
We genuinely owe our lives to him.
Today on Saved on Camera, an off-road motorcyclist hits a rock on a mountain trail.
I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me. I knew there was a cliff. I knew I was going to fall.
In the UK, the serenity of England's Lake District came to an abrupt end for two climbers when they get into trouble.
It hit his head. There was blood everywhere, all over the rock, all over him. You quickly realise that you're on your own. Initially, he didn't know where he was, so it was quite worrying.
A seal is slowly strangling itself on a rope off the coast of the Shetland Isles in the UK.
There was no way it was getting out. The rope was twisted right around its neck.
And in America, a man and his two dogs are trapped when the boat they are on catches fire.
I opened the engine compartment, and at that point, the smoke and big ball of fire just kind of blew back towards me.
An off-road biker in America will go so off-road, he ends up falling off a cliff.
I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me.
70 feet below him lay a pool of water, and he would try and grab anything to break his fall.
I remember this little pine tree slipping through my hands, and I'm like, this is it. Rick, this is how you're gonna die right here.
Rick Hogg is a 50-year-old motorbike enthusiast from Texas.
My main hobby, I would have to say, is motorcycling. It's really been a part of my life since in my 20s. Just had a lot of motorcycles, whether they were dirt bikes or road bikes. It became just a passion.
And his passion for all things biking took him to the Elk Mountain Range in the Colorado Rockies.
Me and a good group of friends get together from different parts of the country and really just enjoy the scenic beauty that Colorado offers there.
One of his best friends on the trip is fellow enthusiast Ryan Edward, who he met through biking 20 years ago.
Motorcycles have always been in my life since I was very young. My father got me my first dirt bike at 4.5 years old. Motorcycles is definitely my favorite hobby. Rick and I met through motorcycles, along with several other guys, all based around motorcycles and racing.
The guy's certainly got these crazy skills on a dirt bike, and I think it just comes to him naturally.
And to make the most of their experience, they needed to go off the beaten track to a place called Crystal View.
It's in a very, very scenic yet remote part of Colorado where you don't have cell service for 30 minutes. One section of this that is quite challenging. One site has said it's the most dangerous pass in Colorado. So this is pretty treacherous descent, and then of course the climb back up, where there's this rock shelf, and so you have a lot of these pointed rocks that you have to navigate across. Ryan and I looked at each other and said, hey, let's make a run at it. There was already anxiety thinking about this particular section. 3 other friends that were there with us that decided to not do it. They would just wait for us at the top. Ryan and I were just gonna go down, turn right around and come back up. We'd be right up in a few minutes.
Leaving the rest of their friends behind, Rick and Ryan set off on their challenging route.
Ryan took off. Momentum is very critical, so if the rider in front of you stalls the bike or struggles, that's going to affect your momentum. So you usually space out on the climb up. The downhill, you do that as well, but it's not quite as important because you have gravity keeping that momentum going typically.
Having reached the top of the trail, Rick begins the downward climb, but his natural instinct kicks in, putting him in danger.
My downhill descent was too slow. It's apprehension, this self-preservation just comes in, right? It's like, you need to go faster, but something in your mind goes, hey, if I'm going faster, I'm gonna be in more danger. On a motorcycle, it's key to have your momentum going and really just stick it. And, that's kind of where I went wrong that day. I got to what's called head shake on a motorcycle, where the front end gets light and the wheel will kind of bounce back and forth. And when it did this and it bounced to the left, I'm pretty confident that caused me to hit the throttle. And unfortunately, I was pointed in a direction off of the trail and, of course, off the cliff. I knew I was in trouble. I had no idea what was below me. I knew there was a cliff. I knew I was gonna fall. My kids flashed right into my mind. I have 3 wonderful young kids. The next thing that happened is me scrambling for anything to slow me down. And I remember vividly this little pine tree on the side of the rock. And I remember that slipping through my hands. And I'm like, this is it. Rick, this is how you're gonna die right here.
Rick and his bike end up 70 feet below in a swimming hole, known as the Devil's Punch Bowl, and he's convinced he's about to drown.
The first thing I thought was, you've got to get to the surface. It's unbelievable that you're not dead. I'm sure I was in shock. It's just cold, cold water, but I'm scrambling to get to the surface. I've got all of this gear on. I've got heavy, wet boots, helmet, gloves, goggles. I was thankful to be alive, and so I looked around to try to find a way out, and I was between 2 waterfalls, and so I couldn't go downstream. I would have fallen down this waterfall. I didn't feel comfortable crossing the water because of the current. I was afraid it would take me down, and so I just sat there, and I'm like, right now the best thing to do is be patient.
Unaware of the drama down below, Rick's friend Ryan is waiting for him at the top.
When I got to the top and realized that he had not come within the next couple of minutes, never a bad feeling that something had gone wrong until I walked all the way down. And every corner I would go around, I would expect to see Rick in the motorcycle sitting there waiting for some assistance or pushing the bike to get it over a hard spot. Each corner was kind of a little bit more of a letdown, like maybe there was a problem. I got around the very last corner and could see the bridge at the bottom to where I knew he would be waiting. As soon as I saw that Rick was not there, that is when I got a panic feeling that something was not correct. I moved over to the edge and just started yelling his name. As I'm yelling, I hear a response, and I look over the edge of a cliff and I see Rick standing at the bottom at the water.
He said, "How did you get down there?" And I made this motion like off the cliff and in the water, and his eyes just got big as saucers. And I think that's probably when the reality hit him of, how I got down there.
I expected to see injury, obviously, looking off the cliff of that far, even after getting an answer. I was just elated to see that he was able to move around.
How do I get out of here? Because I had no clue, because all I see is a rock wall. I did know that there was this one rock that was about 8 feet tall, maybe 10, that had some handholds. I thought I could climb out, but I wasn't sure where that was going to take me.
So I walk up and down the edge of the trail, and I can see where people had previously crawled down there, which would have been not a ridiculously hard climb if you were in hiking boots and some pants and stuff, but in motocross gear and boots and helmets and everything else, it was a much more challenging climb. So I was not real excited to go down to see how to get him out of there, but slid down and got to the point to where we could actually touch hands and know that he could come up the harder part and realize that it was going to be an option to climb right out of it.
So he came down and met me really at the top of this rock. I climbed out, and then, you know, I'm shaking for sure. He helps me, you know, get up, to where the trail was. Of course, you know, it's 70 feet above or so. And when we got up there, it was just amazing. Yeah, I mean, I hugged him, and, it was good to be alive. And that's when the emotions really hit me of what I could have lost. And how quickly, you know, it can go from just out riding on a beautiful Colorado trail to, you shouldn't be there.
And Rick knows just how lucky he was.
So the amazing thing after going through all of this is the only injury I had was a bruise just above my right elbow and a little teeny scratch that went along with it. The rest of the riders kind of went into kind of support mode as well, and they were able to find me a ride back into town. But you know, the thing that was so special for me is watching my friends come together, just trying to help me get out of there. Ryan specifically. Every day, the rest of my life, I'm going to consider a gift. I really don't think I should be here. So many things went absolutely right. And when I look at it and go, you know, the momentum I had going off the cliff, while that was bad, it shot me off the trail, I think it was critical to my survival because I was able to clear some of these rocks that were below. I had promised my kids, the lesson learned for me is not to get in high consequence areas. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I could lose it all. That's my promise to them. We want to go back there. We will walk it and kind of reflect on, the things that have happened. I look forward to doing that.
In the UK, two mountaineers face a life or death situation when their climb goes wrong.
The last thing I remember was feeling uneasy.
I heard him screaming. He was falling directly above me. There was blood everywhere.
And any rescue attempt would also come with its own challenges.
The helicopter disappeared, and then the helicopter came back, and we didn't know what was going on.
I was starting to shiver. I could die of hypothermia.
England's Lake District and its inherent beauty has inspired artists and writers for centuries. And it continues to welcome hundreds of thousands of tourists every year. It's also on the checklist for outdoor adventurers, two of whom travelled there from London.
I've been climbing for about 20 to 30 years. For me, it's the focus that you have. When you're in the middle of a climb, your mind, body, everything is just focused on right now.
I think there's a couple of options for us to get there.
I got interested in climbing to start with. I was about 15 or 16 at college with a friend. We went climbing indoors and then started going on adventures.
The weather's looking fantastic.
The guys met when Rob joined the Surbiton and Kingston Climbing Club, where Paul was already a member. They both share a passion for adventure.
We've both got a similar interest for doing more mountaineering styles, more challenging climbing.
The thing about Rob is you always feel that he's competent, he's safe. He's going to look after you if anything goes wrong.
This would be tested to the limit in a climb that Rob had his sights set on.
Pillar is one of those climbs that we've always wanted to do, or I've always wanted to do. But it's quite awkward in that it's 3 hours of hiking to get there. I sent an email out to the club, and Paul was the only one who responded out of the entire club, so it was a perfect match.
Well, leave for 9.
Leave for 9.
Yeah, leave for 9.
Both knew there may be risks.
It's a bit of a challenge. The weather's got to be good, and not everyone can climb it. You need to trust your climbing partner, and I trust Paul.
And so the scene was set for what should have been a difficult but successful climb. Having travelled up from London the night before, they set off the next morning.
We climb generally in pairs. One of the pair is leading, is going first, and the other is holding the rope. And if that leader falls, he's counting on the belayer to hold the rope to stop them, because you will fall a certain distance and then the rope should catch you.
We expected the climb to take maybe 3 or 4 hours. The route is 5 pitches. A pitch is a section of the climb, so you get to a point where you can stop and secure yourself to the rock.
We had a quick chat about who was going to take the first lead, which fell to myself, and then proceeded to do the climb.
As leader, Paul's job was to climb to the first safe position, secure a protection device that allowed him to clip his rope into, and meant, should he fall, the distance would be minimised.
First 2, 3 pitches went really well, and these were the hard pitches. We were feeling pretty good. Really positive mood throughout the climb.
This euphoria was not to last.
But pitch 3 was the crux, and we'd done that.
Then into what was meant to be the easy 2 pitches.
Paul took the lead on pitch 4.
I started up a groove in the rock. I got to the top of that groove, and I was faced with a fairly blank wall.
We sort of felt like he was going off route. He traversed round to the left to get back onto the route. And at that point, I could no longer see him.
No longer in Rob's eye line, Paul knew they were off the beaten path.
There are telltale signs. The rocks or routes which have had a lot of travel will have wear marks in them where people have placed their protection. At this point, there weren't any telltale signs which I was absolutely comfortable with.
Roughly 15 metres below, and no longer able to see his climbing partner, Rob too was starting to feel uncomfortable.
I remember calling up to him to say, I'm pretty convinced it's over to the left. And I think Paul shouted back, I'm committed now. When he said he was committed, I was a little bit nervous.
Paul was less than confident about his next move, but he had committed.
There was a small pocket on my left and a little nubbin on my right and a shallow crack in the middle. I placed some gear protection in the crack, but I wasn't really happy with it. It was very shallow. I didn't feel that it was secure, really, but it was the best I could do. So I was feeling a little bit apprehensive.
I didn't know how much protection he'd put in at that point or how good it was.
But they ignored their gut feeling.
The last things I remember were feeling uneasy about the gear I'd placed.
Maybe 10 seconds later, I heard him screaming. I looked up and he was flying through the air.
Later, battered and bruised, Paul is not in a good way, and things go from bad to worse.
First thing I did was grab the phone, and there was no reception. You quickly realise that you're on your own.
Sandnes in the UK, and a boat races to save the life of a seal that's been caught in a lobster line.
This was a full-grown, very, very aggressive seal.
Because they could take your hand off quite easily.
We don't be careful.
He's been stuck for several hours, is exhausted, frightened, and close to drowning.
Careful, careful.
The Shetland Isles are the most northerly point in the UK, famous for their dramatic scenery, thriving fishing industry and wildlife, both on the land and in the sea. On a fishing trip, Martin Garrick was checking his lobster pots when he came across something strange.
When I came to some of the boys, and one of them disappeared. And then I realised, oh my God, there's a seal tied to it.
Seeing the seal was struggling, he immediately called for help from the SSPCA. And on duty that day was Teresa Leask.
I spoke to Martin and he said he'd seen this seal with this boy attached to it. It was tangled. He kindly took me out on the boat just to see the rope was twisted right around its neck.
And then she wanted to try and get it in the boat. I said, no, the boat's far too small.
The seal was probably about the same size as me, I would imagine. So yeah, the seal would have had the strength to capsize the boat with me and Martin in it. We knew that time was pressing. So it was obvious straight away that we needed to get a bigger boat.
Teresa's first call was to the local seal experts.
So my first thought was to get Jan and Pete involved. They would know what to do.
To stand a chance of success, it was imperative to find a bigger boat. So they wasted no time in calling round the fishing community for help.
I've had a call about a grey seal pup in trouble.
We spent about at least an hour, maybe more, phoning around everybody we knew to see who might have a boat.
So I rang a friend on the west side. She knew a man with the boat. Sorry to bother you. This is Jan from the Wildlife Sanctuary in Hillswick. We wondered if you could help us. I rang that man. He said he'd do it, so we just headed over there straight away.
With the boat located, Jan and Pete rushed to the harbour to meet up with Teresa and trawler owner Sean Williamson.
So we drove down to the west side, and he was there waiting for us. We met up with Teresa from the SSPCA, and she came on with a wetsuit in tow, and we all steamed off to the place where the seal was.
By now, the seal had been in distress for several hours, and its condition growing more serious by the minute.
When they came back with the bigger boat, then I knew they wouldn't understand where it was. That's when I went back over and showed them where it was.
But being tangled in a long rope and moving around meant finding the seal again wasn't going to be easy.
It must have been at least 20 minutes before we actually caught sight of it. It was coming up to the surface and then disappearing again. Then it would appear somewhere completely differently, so we never knew where it was going to be.
It was trapped. The rope was wrapped around something, and it could come up and get air and go back down again, but it couldn't go more than about 50 yards.
We then had to figure out how on earth we were going to catch it. How do you actually catch a seal when it's going to dive again really quickly?
Teresa had what she thought was a solution to catching the seal, albeit a dangerous one.
We'd struggled to see the rope from the boat, and I thought, well, I would get a better view in the water. It's not the wisest thing to do is to jump in the water with a stressed seal.
It was a bit concerning, just in case the seal got a hold of her, you see. They're great big teeth in them, they'll tear you up in a minute, like.
Teresa, this is not a good idea, but she was determined to do it.
My adrenaline was just pumping just to get this rescue done because I could see it was distress. I didn't know what I was going to get at all. I had to try.
Would Teresa's gamble pay off? Find out later as she risks getting close to this dangerous animal. Meanwhile, two climbers in England's Lake District were nearing the end of their climb.
We were into what was meant to be the easy pitches.
When things started to go wrong.
I was feeling a little bit apprehensive.
The protection device used to secure the lead climber had failed.
I heard him screaming.
And he was falling through the air.
He was upside down, falling directly above me. And I could see around the rope, the protection that he'd put in had come out of the rock.
Paul was right to have been apprehensive. The protection did not hold and he had now fallen, quite severely.
He swung into the rock right next to me, head and shoulder first, clattering into the rock. There was blood everywhere, all over the rock, all over him. I shouted across to him. He didn't really respond. I managed to reach over and grab hold of his harness. I was able to pull him onto the ledge where I was stood. I didn't know what kind of state he would be in because he'd hit his head. First thing I did was grab the phone, and there was no reception. You quickly realise that you're on your own.
Their remote location, something that first attracted the pair to the climb Pillar Rock, was now against them.
My second reaction was then just to shout for help, and luckily someone was in the valley. She had reception and was able to call mountain rescue.
By then, Paul had regained consciousness.
The first thing I do remember after waking up is Rob got his coat off and put it around me in addition to my own, and was basically talking to me and telling me what was happening.
Initially, he didn't know where he was, so he actually thought we'd finished the climb and was somewhere else, so it was quite worrying.
But the fall had resulted in other injuries.
I was having intense pain from my shoulder and from my eye and around my eye. I was just thinking, oh, I'm bleeding, and then trying to wipe it out of my face.
Luckily, by then, help had started to arrive.
We'd been sat on the ledge for probably an hour or so before the helicopter came. I jumped up and waved.
But it wasn't that straightforward.
Then the helicopter disappeared. And then the helicopter came back, and I jumped up and waved again, and the helicopter went away again. It was quite dramatic to see them come and then see them disappear again. The helicopter couldn't get in close enough to winch him directly, and we didn't know what was going on.
Also making his way to the scene was mountain rescue volunteer Martin Pickavance. He'd got the call 20 miles away in the classroom where he teaches.
I knew that it was a casualty with a head injury and serious trauma, so I picked up some bits and bobs of first aid equipment that I had in the back of the vehicle and just headed off.
With only this detail, Martin had to consider the worst.
The fallen climber is on Megatron. I'll get back to you if there's any further information. Over.
Immediately, you're thinking, where is this climber? Is this climber still suspended on the rope halfway up the rock face? Has his partner managed to get him onto a ledge? Have they managed to get him to the bottom of the crag? Has he fallen the full length of the crag and ended up at the bottom? And all those things are tumbling through your head.
Back on Pillar Rock, Paul was conscious that he was deteriorating.
I was starting to shiver, and maybe I was starting to show the first signs of hypothermia. When you're injured in that sort of country, the initial injury isn't necessarily the thing that kills you. You could die of hypothermia.
The rescue team, though, were putting their plan into place.
We put a rope along that scramble so that we could get gear and people onto the top of Low Man. Low Man's a part of Pillar Mountain, if you like. It's the highest point. It's where the rock climbs stop. So we knew that from the top of Low Man, we could carry out a rescue.
All the while, Rob kept a watch on Paul.
He was kind of huddled in and protecting his arm, so I was looking down the valley and spotting people and just kind of relaying what was going on a little bit to Paul. And the helicopter picked some of the mountain rescue guys up, helicoptered them up to the top of Pillar and dropped them off there.
Once we'd set the rescue rope system up, we were able to lower in our first rescuer. Chris went down to the casualty site.
It was a big relief to see him.
These guys were huddled onto the tiniest little ledge. There was no way that Chris was going to get onto that ledge with them. He managed to get a dressing onto Paul's head, did a quick assessment, and then made a decision at that point that the safest thing for Paul and the quickest way to get him out of that area into hospital was to lower him down.
The overriding feeling I got was, people are looking after me. I'll get through this.
Paul, by this stage, was conscious. They abseiled down to a much bigger ledge called Green Ledge, where we had casualty carers waiting to look after Paul's injuries.
For Rob, it meant relief.
It was great to see him down at the bottom and in good hands. I was very relieved.
Paul's strapped into the stretcher. We've gone into a warm sleeping bag. The winchman came down to us and winched Paul into the helicopter and took him away.
At hospital, the true extent of Paul's injuries were now known.
They confirmed that my shoulder was dislocated and nothing was broken. Then proceeded to tug very heavily on my arm to reset the shoulder, and that was quite painful. I got a bleed on the brain. They had a look at it. It was only about 4 mils at that time. They didn't seem to be too concerned. They said they'd sort of basically monitor me.
But Paul, Rob and Martin know that things could have been a lot worse.
If that gear hadn't have held, he would have fallen much further. And if none of the gear had held, he would have fallen directly onto me and possibly could have pulled us both off the rock.
Just pleased that on the day, everything went in their favour and the team were able to help.
And for Paul, the whole event has given him a new perspective on life.
You really start to understand, once you've been through these life-threatening situations, that life is for living. It is about experiencing life, about actually not holding back, not waiting for tomorrow, doing it today. Tomorrow might not be there.
In America, a retired serviceman finds himself and his 2 dogs trapped on a burning boat.
I was exhausted, out of breath, and I thought if somebody doesn't get to me quickly, this is not going to end favorably.
Mike and Jamie Babbitt from Bremerton in Washington are a match made in heaven.
Jamie and I have been married for 4 years now. We've known each other for 5 years.
We've been glued together since then, and we have a wonderful time. We get along great, and we laugh a lot.
The couple share a passion for life on the sea.
While we were dating, we would just walk around the marina and we would just say, you know, we'd really love to just have a boat to be out on the water.
We saved and bought it about 2 years ago, and we've been living on it. It's been beautiful. Obviously, it's a smaller living compartment than what we were used to, and we have 2 English bulldogs named Hootie and Pearl.
The couple and their 2 dogs were enjoying their new life.
It's so peaceful and calming and relaxing, and it's just something special about how you feel while you're on the water.
We moor our boat at the Bremerton Yacht Club in Bremerton, Washington. It's just a beautiful place, and it's like a small family there at our club.
That small family at the yacht club would end up owing so much to Mike.
Jamie had to do some shopping, and I was on the boat with the dogs, and the boat needed to have more fuel put in it, so I was preparing it to take it over to our fuel dock. Then I walked back down into the salon again. There was smoke inside the salon. The stairway down into the passageway lifts up so you can go into the engine compartment. So I lifted that up, and at that point the smoke and big ball of fire just kind of blew back towards me. The fire was just too big, too overwhelming.
Mike immediately thought of others.
I can't let my friends and family of the yacht club suffer, so I drove the boat out as quickly as I could with the limited time I had. I set the chain and the anchor so that it would catch and not blow back into the marina.
Having driven the burning boat away from the people on the marina, he now turned his attention to saving himself and the dogs.
There was no time to make any kind of calls. I grabbed the bulldogs and put them on our aft deck and grabbed their life vests and put them on. I grabbed the paddleboard, which was up on top of our boat, and slid it down into the water, and I put Pearl on first. And Hootie kind of somehow knew what was going on, so he just stepped right onto the paddleboard. After about a minute or two, I became really cold. I was exhausted, out of breath, and I thought if somebody doesn't get to me quickly, this is not going to end favorably.
Back at the marina, other boat owners became aware of Mike's plight.
I heard people coming down the dock and they were yelling, "Hey, there's a fire out here. Mike Babbitt's boat's on fire." And that immediately got everybody to kick into gear.
Roy sped out in his dinghy and joined the other club members.
When they pulled me out of the water and into the boat, it was a sigh of relief. I was very winded, out of oxygen, and very cold.
Luckily, by the time we got to shore, the fire department was already there, so they were able to take Mike and lay him down and start assessing the situation.
My throat hurt, which is an indication of smoke inhalation, and I was still extremely cold, and they thought that I might have some slight amount of hypothermia.
By this stage, the boat club had been able to reach Mike's wife, Jamie.
Seeing Jamie's face and embracing each other really kind of made me feel much, much better. And she said, you know, it's just stuff. We can replace it. You and the dogs are fine. And that really gave me a sense of relief.
Jamie then found out just how amazing her husband was that day.
I was just so proud of him for having the state of mind that he did, and just so relieved that he was granted the physical capabilities to be able to do what he did. I think he's done a lot of heroic things.
And the other boat owners were keen to show their appreciation.
After the boat, sinking, I donated a bunch of clothes and shoes like that to Mike, and I know that we started a fund to help the Babbitts out and stuff too.
Mike is all too aware, though, of how bad the situation could have been, and it has changed his mind about his living arrangements.
When I look back on how fast the fire moved, I feel very grateful that it wasn't during the nighttime when we were sleeping. I think that for right now, we've decided we're probably going to live back on land. But boating is still in our future. But I think a home on land is our next step.
Back in the UK, a seal is strangling on a fishing rope and rescuers are trying everything to save it. Local wildlife officer Teresa Leese was determined to reach the seal.
She had a shepherd's crook and she would have hooked it and pulled it in.
Can you get the rope?
But even when she took the staff and tried to do it, the staff just slid down the rope. But she was eyeball to eyeball with the seal.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked, but it was as well. So yeah, we both sort of turned around at the same point. This was a full-grown, very, very aggressive seal.
So we were all getting a bit concerned as to how we were going to actually manage this.
I said it would be great if we had a grappling hook that we could throw it out, hook the rope and pull. And the guy on board said, I've got one.
The next time the seal appeared, he threw the grappling hook and managed to catch the line.
So the best thing that we could do was to winch it up to the boat and try and cut it free.
It looked horrific at the time, but the main thing was we had really sharp knives ready to cut through those ropes.
Even though the seal was now closer to the boat on the winch, they faced more problems.
It's going to choke if we don't be careful.
This was a large, angry grey seal with very big teeth, and it was snapping, and its head was moving really, fast.
Careful. The adrenaline that was going through me wanted to go and be a bit more hands-on, but it's a wild animal, and it was highly stressed. So I stepped back and let them cut it free.
But freeing the seal meant the crew putting themselves in danger.
There's not just one rope around there, there's a few different bits of rope. And so he cut away and cut away and cut away, and we thought we'd freed it.
They cut some of it and it sort of twirled and dropped, but another piece of rope was still holding it.
Because it was freer at that point, it could move its head even more, so it was even more dangerous, because they could take your hands off quite easily.
Jan and Pete's experience of rescuing seals proved to be vital.
You put a towel over the head. As long as you've got that covered, you can handle a seal. If the head isn't covered, you can get a very dangerous bite.
It was a bit scary, but you don't think about it when you're doing it. You just do it.
They put the towel over and Pete started cutting like crazy to get the other bit off. It dropped into the water and shot off in the other direction.
And the seal came past me, doing 100 miles an hour. There was a great big cheer on every boat, like, and just dancing around them.
Well, we all just started shouting because we were so happy that we'd saved it.
I stayed well back, and as soon as it was free, I was getting on the boat pretty fast.
What a feeling that was, to suddenly see this seal escape and go back and swim off into the wild. It's a fantastic feeling.
And we will always have that memory and knowledge that we worked together and we did it together.
We had kind of a group hug and said, wow, we did it. You know, we couldn't believe it.
So through teamwork and local knowledge, the people of Shetland saved the seal from certain death.
Hi, I'm Martin.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Casualty.
Yeah, Casualty. Good to see you,
Phil.
Paul. I'm Rob.
Yeah,
Hi, Rob
nice to meet
Martin.
you,
Nice to meet you.
Phil.
Nice to meet you.
Just a couple of months after their dramatic mountain rescue, Paul and Rob are back in the Lake District to meet 2 of the 20-strong team that saved them.
How you doing then?
My eyes are a bit weird.
Yeah, I can see.
So it looks down here.
Yeah.
Because the nerves are still pinched a little bit from swelling.
So that'll go down and it should...
That's what the doctors think. It'll go down and it'll come back.
Yeah. And did you have a minor bleed as well?
I had a minor head bleed.
Yeah.
So that's when they kept me in for 3 days.
And the arm?
Arm, yeah, the shoulder doesn't work very well. I've got nerve damage.
Yeah.
So the signals are not getting to the muscles.
Yeah.
So I can sort of do that.
I've got some issues that I've got to work through. I've got some functionality issues, if you like, because my arm's not currently working. But prognosis at the moment is should get better.
Paul is well on his way to recovery, but the events that day have left him cautious.
I do question myself because I know that I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you think, well, why did I proceed? But then...
Yeah, but then how many times have you been in that position?
I've been
That's called climbing. Normal climbing.
I've been there a lot of times and gone through it. At the moment, I don't think I'll change.
No. Good.
I'll be still going out climbing.
Good. Yeah. These were 2 guys that were experienced rock climbers that had an accident. There's no fault to be attributed there. For all intents and purposes, could have been one of us. When you get a message that comes through and you know it's a climber that's fallen, everybody in the team's a climber or has been a climber in the past. So there's a real empathy there.
For Paul and Rob, though, today is also about saying thank you.
We sort of been doing a bit of fundraising by social media for the team.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
It was great to see the mountain rescue guys again and be able to give them something, and great to be able to say thanks.
The mountain rescue teams are just fantastic. They're volunteers. They get no money from the government. They really deserve support, especially from people like myself who require their services, but other people who come out into the wilds of the country.
They're in a really serious position. It's really satisfying to know that we're helping those that need us.
I don't know how you can thank them enough, and I think I will be supporting them through the rest of my life. They're just heroes.